Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Get into it.
And welcome to the Retrograde,
the video game podcast where this week we recap with awards one of the greatest years in video game history.
Oh, wow. My name's Andrew Baskin, but with me as always is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself.
Mikey for a second time in only 2 or 3 weeks, Aaron Worth.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost needed because we're here recapping the Game Awards that happened very recently. And we had made predictions a couple weeks ago on the podcast, and so we're here to see who is right and who is wrong.
Yeah, and we promised we would make a game out of this, and we would tally points, and we would hold it against one another if one of us did much better in the awards. And now, we did this a couple weeks ago. We figured we would make some predictions, and then obviously, assign points to who was correct and everything. I don't know, Andrew. I think maybe the game of it all is a little immature. I don't know if we need to actually go into assigning points, or it's just like honestly, at the end of the day, who cares? You know what I mean? It's like
I do.
You would.
No, I care.
No, and I understand that and I respect it, but I think if we're just going to make a competition out of this, here's the thing, before we made our predictions, you didn't give me time to stretch, you didn't give me time to warm up or anything like that. Like, you really caught me off guard.
So, you know what, this is another classic case of Mikey telling on himself, because I didn't write down yours, but I did write down mine, and now I have a very good idea that I've beaten you, and this is very satisfying to me.
Here's the thing. I guess if we're keeping track, we can say you didn't beat me, Andrew. I lost.
I beat myself.
I lost real bad.
Did you really? Oh, I cannot wait to go over this now.
I was so bad. It's like I was playing whack-a-mole and purposely going for the hole that the mole isn't popping out of. It was fucking ridiculous.
It's like one of the last moles just spit on your chest or something like that. And you're like, Jesus Christ,
and that
so disrespectful.
That last mole, Andrew, Robert De Niro's.
Robert De Niro.
His mole.
Oh, his mole.
Yeah.
His mole. Physical mole.
Yeah.
Who famous moles?
Cindy Crawford.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
I do. Can I show my mole on camera?
You have a mole? Okay,
I do
show your mole on
tummy,
camera.
It's
going to be our highest rated. Oh, there you go. They got a mole right there.
Yeah. So that's how you identify me.
Episode.
That's honestly, if it were on my feed, it might be. No, I'm excited to get into this because the Game Awards, I think this is the biggest year in terms of reception for the Game Awards. Would you agree? Like, it feels like everyone's talking about it in a way that not everyone was in past years as much.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, because that's like completely... I think that might be a personal thing where it's like, I feel like the Game Awards are talked about more this year.
Yeah.
I would say it wouldn't be a coincidence considering we've had a very good year for video games. So that would make sense that more people are talking about the Video Game Awards and who's going to win which award.
Yeah, maybe there were so many potential front runners for Game of the Year that everyone's looking for an authority on this, and that's maybe why. But it also could, you're right, very much just be an echo chamber where I'm paying attention to it, therefore I'm hearing from it all over the place. Everyone on Twitter, everyone on Instagram seems to be talking about it. Granted, the majority of people that I follow on Instagram and Twitter are games journalists and games fans as well, so who knows?
And we did a whole episode, and my phone's listening to me going like, this fucker really loves the Game Awards. We should give him as much content as possible.
That's true.
And they're right. They're right.
Yeah, I think our phones are listening to us, Andrew. Good insight there. I agree.
I'm breaking news on this one.
Before we get into the actual awards, we're going to break down all of who won, what our thoughts on who won were.
Yes.
And then also we're going to really dive into all the news announcements and trailers because there was a lot coming out of it. And it turns out that's almost... I would say it's weighted almost like 60%, 40% new announcements and trailers to the awards themselves. But Andrew, you said that you were, you told me off mic that you were going to be starting a new game and that you've spent some time with it. Why don't you catch us up on this new gaming investment that you got going on?
Oh, yes. I've been playing a new game in part due to the Game Awards, because when we were going through the nominees, I said to you, and I think you can hear me in the podcast saying this, I think it was for best action or action adventure, I forget, and I can't tell the difference between the two. It was Dead Island 2.
Yeah.
I said to you, I'm like, was this game good? It's nominated for a Game Award. And you're like, I have no idea. I'm like, oh, okay. I just finished Far Cry. And I didn't know if I had a emotional attachment enough to be like, I don't know, some serious indie game or something like, oh, your daughter's dead. Now you got to find the pieces of her journal. And you're like, oh, man, that sucks.
Edith Finch-esque kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, they've blown to the wind because of your neglect. That sucks. So I was like, no, I'm going to kill some zombies. And it was more the style of the game of going like, you're going to do this, but in the process, you need to collect chemicals and fabric and blades and, and whatever. And this game, it nominated for
Best Action,
for a Game Award, for a TGA. Thank you for Best Action, which it did not win. I just want to spoiler alert. So it's been a lot of fun. I am nearly beaten the game so that was what, 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. And it's not a tremendously long game. So like, it's not. I don't deserve a lot of credit, even though I do beat games, and that's something I'm known for.
Hey, well, I got something to say soon. Anyway, continue.
Okay.
And you know what I'm going to say right now? Go fuck yourself. That's what I had to say.
Wow, you were going to keep that one pent up, eh? Yeah, okay. One day Mikey's just going to punch me. I'll be like, what's that? And you're like, you cut me off 2 years ago. I'll be like, oh, okay. Well, that was weird. Yeah, so it's a really interesting game. So Dead Island is no longer a factual title. I love when people do this and they come up with sequels and they go, oh, the island part doesn't count anymore. It's like, well, that's what it's called. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. This is in Hell A. Where, yeah, zombies are real and they are everywhere, and the containment sites have broken, and so you're in this post-apocalyptic environment, and
everything you're describing right now, Andrew, sounds like nonfiction to me.
Oh my God. You know what the zombies don't care about? The Constitution. It's just like today.
Wow. The right to bear arms? More like the right to have your arms rot off, or bear arms as a weapon.
Yes. Well, that is what it literally means. Yes.
Well, but like arms. Like
to carry arms as weapons.
Yes, once they rot off of the zombies, I can beat them to death, to re-death with them. Like a
uninspired Goro, me just holding forearms and running around.
Yeah, exactly. Uninspired Goro was the
deconstructed. Deconstructed was the word I was thinking of.
Poetry. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a ton of maiming in this game, so I'm glad you brought that up. It's interesting. You get to play as one of, I think, 5 different characters. You have to choose at the beginning, and there's no re-choosing from there. And they all have different attributes. And since I'm new to the world, I'm like, God, I hope I picked the right one.
Sure.
I picked Carla, a woman. No. Also,
she'd be really good. She'd be really, really good at that game, I think.
If anyone doesn't know who Carla Mocha is, she is the accomplice to a very famous serial killer in Where We're From. And she's now free. She's like in a school or something like that.
Well, people outside of Where We're From would know the serial killer from Don't Fuck with Cats. It was Paul Bernardo, right?
Oh
wait, no. Sorry. Don't Fuck with Cats is someone else.
Okay, well, this is
this is someone very different. Never mind.
Someone also bad though.
Yes. Yeah.
In the attempt of trying to help, you're like, uh-oh.
I just confuse things so much.
Yeah, nonetheless, a serial killer. So she's a young woman that loves violence. She's very excited to hurt people all the time, and as her voice lines are very excited to be like, yeah, I get to kill people, and you're like, oh nice. Boy, this is a lot. But I'd say it's a fun game. You get to travel through all of LA. So you're going to Venice Beach and you're going to Beverly Hills. And you're going to and each area has a different, very different look to it, and different zombies, and so it doesn't take itself too seriously in this world of like zombies where people are like, no, zombies are like this and they came from this, and you're like, no. This one's got like a guy who used to be an electrician, so now he emits shockwaves. This was a bodybuilder, so he's kind of a tank. This one's and they're all, like one's a screaming person, and I think they're kind of influencers, which is kind of funny. It is funny where we're going to talk about GTA soon, and
that's coming next week. We should say our GTA episode, because the trailer launched. That's going to be next week, and we're going to do a full trailer breakdown and predictions on that. Yes. So if you're waiting for our thoughts on that, which I know a lot of you are, wait till next week. And it's going to be worth the wait, because a lot of what we talk about, we actually haven't seen reported on very much. Our opinions on the trailers. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So we're excited for that. That's going to be coming up soon. But it's playing this game that you start appreciating Rockstar and humor and stuff like that, where Rockstar can be very juvenile. I totally get that. They can be absolutely quick to a joke, and like, you're like, oh, that's kind of cheap or whatever. But then you start playing other video game writing, and you're like, oh, okay. Like, you're just, it doesn't land sour, it lands flat, where you're like, instead of going, okay, very funny, Rockstar, you go, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that's even worse. And so there's some jokes in it where you're like, okay, that's fine.
Do you mean because they're not funny, or because they're
not
like,
funny.
Okay, but not like they're just like blatantly offensive, like 1990s, early 2000s style video game humor?
No, they're just not funny.
Okay.
And so like when there's so little dialogue in the game, like, God, you better make it kind of count. So I don't know. It's good. It's very repetitive because you like everywhere you go, you're like, hey, a ton of zombies. Like, so you just got to be okay with killing a ton of zombies if you're okay with this game. Lots of different weapons, lots of different weapon upgrades. You can eventually guns come into it, which I kind of halfway through the game, I was like, oh, there's guns? Oh, okay. You know, whatever. That's a big difference than the crowbar I've been carrying.
Sure.
So it's an interesting game. It looks really good. I'll say that. It looks really good. And yeah, I would recommend somebody play it, but it's really mindless kind of entertainment.
Did you ever play Dead Rising?
Yes, I did. The first one.
It seems like this is kind of a similar vibe where it doesn't take itself too seriously. There are different types of zombies, and it's more about just like, look at this mass amount of zombies that you get to deal with, but this one's obviously in first person. I'm kind of jealous of you, Andrew, because you, it seems, have stumbled upon this or discovered this genre, the style of game that really speaks to you. You know, you're tearing through all the Far Cry games. Dead Island 2 definitely shares some of the same DNA where it's this first person action and kind of parkour element to it. Do you have another one in sight, like a similar kind of game, or are you looking to kind of branch off and do something totally different?
I hope I can branch off and do something different. It depends. It's just so sad that you just get older and you like have to designate so much time to things like this. We go like, I really need to sit down and play an hour of this. Instead of going like, I have so much time on my hands, I don't know what to do with myself. So I would say I hope to branch off, because you're right. These games are so similar. This is so similar to Far Cry. It's crazy. The only thing I would say that is unique to this, good or bad, is that there is fast travel between, or you have to load screen between areas.
Oh, cool.
Which I haven't seen in a long time, right? Like Far Cry, Rockstar, whatever.
Not cool. You mean like
no.
When you said fast travel, I'm like, great, but you mean when you go from one space, one area to another, you have to actually hit the load screen.
Load screen, that like is like
crossing a bridge in Grand Theft Auto, kind of.
Totally. And so it's like, would you like to go back to Venice Beach? And you're like, great. And it's like, cutscene.
Oh, that
sucks.
Like,
oh. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I haven't seen that in so long. And I will say that, yes, the areas are very deep. Like, there's lots of detail to them, but they're not so much that you're like, I couldn't imagine just blending the two of them together.
Yeah.
And I will say, Mikey, this game is also, you're a living nightmare, because every corner and every drawer has something that you need to check.
Don't like it.
And you are impulsively checking everything. And you're like, oh, it's just, oh my God, it's just the worst.
One of the big issues that I had with the game, that this is actually what I wanted to hold off on saying, because you accused me of never finishing games, Andrew. I have finished Alan Wake 2. I'm not going to spend too much time today talking about it. I'm going to save that for next week as well, because we're going to end up touching on a lot of stuff at the Game Awards as well. It had a pretty good showing. But yeah, spending most of my time in that game when it's trying to draw my eye with really cool narrative storytelling and all that stuff, just spending all my time looking in like the corners and behind trees and stuff for collectibles, because that's just for some reason what I'm doing. That I find very frustrating in gaming, but you know, I know I'm definitely in the minority there. But no, I'm excited to hear you got this Dead Island game going on, and it's good news.
Yeah. There was eventually a clown type zombie that was trying to kill me, who had maimed off his two hands and his bones were spikes.
Oh wow!
He's trying to spike me and stuff like that. Very scary.
Jesus.
Very scary stuff, to the point that I came back from work or the bar or something like that, and it was like, oh, I got some time on my hands. I'm going to play a little bit of this Dead Island, and it was like midnight, and I actually am playing, and it's night in the game, and I turned around, there was a zombie, and I went, ah! Like at home alone, and I went, well, that's enough of this game tonight. All right, I'm going to play in the daylight for now.
That's tough, because you know, one of the few times that I have similar to that to play video games is at night.
Yes.
And I can't play a game like Alan Wake 2 at night, because I'm so, every time there's a pop out scare, my heart rate spikes to like 300, and it ruins me, and then I can't sleep. And unfortunately, that just means I'm sleeping poorly when I'm playing good games. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, no, that does suck, but yeah.
Well, let's get into it, Andrew. Before we actually get into the awards and we break them down, I just want to give a couple shout outs to some of our listeners. We had some listener mail that I want to read here. Listener mail. In regards to my, last week I was talking about my Rock Band skill that I had. So Lonely Badger at Lonely Badger on Twitter, a friend of the podcast, reached out to me and commented on that. Basically, if you haven't heard the episode, I played Rock Band in front of my girlfriend for the first time, and I'm pretty good at Rock Band, and I thought it was going to be impressive, and just ended up being incredibly embarrassing and almost like sickening and disgusting to everyone who watched me. He said, not the same as Guitar Hero skill because I'm terrible at video games, but one time I was playing Red Dead Redemption, and I lassoed this lady in town and dragged her for probably 5 minutes so I could get her on the train tracks, and just waited until the train yeeted her. Probably took 10 minutes total. His partner came around and the corner and looked at him with disgust. She saw the whole thing, and what an embarrassing moment that is as well, especially for someone who isn't fully in on video games, who just sees you do something, kind of like we talk about The Sims. I have this story of playing The Sims, and I remember, you know, I would do the thing that everyone did. I would put them in the attic. I would put a bunch of fireplaces around and a bunch of shitty wooden chairs, take out the doors and light them on fire. And my mom walked in the room when I was playing computer and doing this, and she was horrified, like disgusted with it. And she's like, what is this game? You shouldn't be allowed to play this game. And me, thinking I was going to make it better, said, no, don't worry. That's not how you play the game. It's just how I play the game. And she's like, oh, so you're a sociopath. This is disgusting. Yeah.
There's going to be a documentary called Don't Fuck with Cats. And I might be the main character. I don't know.
Don't fuck with The Sims, I think. Yeah.
It's sadder. It's sadder too that, like, you're right. Like, it's not only just generic violence that you're showing somebody on a video game and go, look what I can do. And they're like, that's scary. Is that you're taking 15 minutes of your time to go like, well, no, wait. And then wait. Okay. Now we just wait for the train. It's like, is the train coming? You're like, I don't know. Then we just wait. And it's kind of what is beautiful about the Wild West. Let's just wait.
Well, you can't pull out your phone and start looking at it. Although when you're playing Red Dead and you're just waiting, do you pull out your phone in real life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If I know, like, I have nothing else to do, I'm like, well, time for me to look down at my phone. He's just looking at the beautiful wilderness and the muffled screams of a woman that's like, please help me.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying that we've desensitized ourselves to that. I similarly, and I'll get into this more next week when I really break down Alan Wake 2. There were moments in some of the narrative dumps that I did pull out my phone and just started scrolling because I was getting fed up with how often they had to tell me the same thing over and over again.
Is there no skip?
There is, but every so often there's a nugget of good information. It's just buried among 80% filler. And I found that a little bit annoying. So I'd kind of like perk up if I heard something, and then otherwise I'd go back to Instagram. Yeah. Yeah.
No, there's a moment at Dead Island. I've been doing that too, where I skipped it because it was like, the guy's like, she's like, are you feeling okay? And he's like, yeah, totally. I'm like, he's a zombie. Skip it. All right, that's fine. Exactly. And then like hard cut
someone
to him
coughs
like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, okay.
It's like every movie that someone coughs and then they look at their hand and there's blood on it. And you're like, oh, I've never seen 100%. That in a movie before. How interesting.
Has anyone ever seen a pregnancy test in a movie that's turned out to be negative?
Well, no, yes, because if that's the story of the movie.
That they can't get
pregnant. And I'm watching Mad Men right now, and that's happening all over the place for Alison Brie's character.
Trudy.
And Pete Campbell, who, by the way, I know everyone's supposed to hate Pete Campbell. When he comes on screen, I get giddy. I love him so much. Like, not as a person, but he is so. I didn't realize he's comedic relief. He's just so out of touch. And I know I'm talking about a like now 10-year-old TV show, but probably more.
I think it's from the 50s. Yeah,
the TV show. It's from the 60s, actually, Andrew.
Oh, 60s? Okay.
Yeah. You can 60s nuts, baby. And with that, let's talk about the Game Awards. Let's go. So we won't recap all of our picks in advance, but we will recap our picks as we hit each of the categories that we talked about. The categories that we talked about were best adaptation, best RPG, action adventure, action. Very important to differentiate the two of those. Indie, ongoing, narrative, game direction, and game of the year.
There's comedy drama.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Comedy action.
But ne'er the three shall meet.
No. It's very clear what's the difference between.
Let's start with adaptation. So your pick and my pick for the winner of this one was both The Last of Us, and this one was no surprise. This one no surprise. This one was just like, what else is it going to be? I guess potentially Super Mario, but in terms of actual quality, I think there was no question about A, which one was the best, and B, what is the best award to give out in order to legitimize video games as a medium. And I think this was similar to like potentially having Idris Elba at the Game Awards and inviting Timothée Chalamet to announce the Game of the Year award for some fucking reason. Just legitimizing.
Because Wonka's coming out, baby. Because Wonka's coming out.
Yeah, the video game Wonka is coming out. Oh, what's that? There is no video game. Oh, okay, never mind. Let's just bring him in anyway. Who cares?
I miss that era that every movie had a video game adaptation.
For real. Like, I just saw on Game Pass, Disney's Up is available, and I was like, Disney, there was a game for Up? But like, of course there was. There was a game for everything. You just blow up balloons and then press F to mourn your dead wife.
Also, speaking about another movie where you couldn't get pregnant. Yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Yeah. The saddest 5 minutes in movies. Yeah, and when that comes in,
it's funny though, like everyone talks about that as just like so sad and heartbreaking, and I'm like, yeah, of course they hammered it home. They picked every tragedy to just throw at you in 5 minutes with a sad musical score. But it's in
silence. It's
it is
so
good. It's well done. But yeah,
I was gonna say, because if it was so eeasy, everyone would do it. But you sit there and it's another Pixar thing where you could just, it goes to cut between scenes in black, and you can hear people going, yeah, because they're like not just crying, they're like hyperventilating at that point.
Yeah. And that's actually the entirety of the video game is just it's dialogue trees with your dead wife.
And then every time there's a continue, Doug the dog is like, "Would you like to play again?" Like, it's just like, "Would you like to play again?"
Point. Comes back with a bone. It's your wife's femur. You're like, no.
Oh no.
Okay, so we both get a point on that one so far. Andrew, you and I are tied 1-1. We're looking good. Now we move to best RPG, and this one also felt like a bit of a runaway category. Everyone was looking at Baldur's Gate 3 as a potential game that was going to sweep the awards or take away a ton of awards. That was the winner of this category. That is what both you and myself guessed. So we both get another point for this one.
Perfect. Did we skip most anticipated? Are we not giving the points for that?
Oh, I think we talked about potentially not having most anticipated as giving points. Did you guess Final Fantasy VII for most anticipated?
No, I guessed Hades.
I guessed Hades as well. So, but I think we talked about like giving what we thought, but not actually applying points because who the fuck knows with that category. But the winner was Final Fantasy VII.
It's not a real thing.
Yeah, it's not a real thing.
Yeah, it's Final Fantasy VII. Okay, I just wanted to check.
Apart from the past, I think 2 or 3 years of the Game Awards when most anticipated went to Tears of the Kingdom for like 2 or 3 years in a row. It's wild, just baffling.
Amazing.
So we get from adaptation and RPG, Andrew, we're tied. Actually, looking at the score, we're tied 1-1 and we both went 100%. Why don't we just healthy draw? Just shake hands.
Aren't we 2-2?
No,
adaptation and RPG. We're 2-2.
Yeah, we're 2 for 2. We're 100%.
Okay,
we're good.
That's
so
great.
Why don't we just call it here, Andrew, and just shake hands and say job well done. I think that would be the gentlemanly thing to do, I think, and I'm a gentleman.
That feels like loser talk to me.
Let's find out the rest. How would I know?
Well, we could find out right now together if you want to. Next category was action.
Next category was action adventure. I guessed Alan Wake 2, and obviously sharing the category with Alan Wake 2 in a genre because this is how clear and concise the separation of categories are at the Game Awards. Tears of the Kingdom was your guess in action adventure. I mean, those are two very seriously comparable games in my mind.
They are both action and adventurous.
They are adventurous and they are action oriented.
Both involve the dead.
Both do involve the dead. Both involve light as well and darkness.
Okay. A ghost that kind of won't leave you alone.
That's true.
That's stay out of your fucking business.
Fairies all over the place.
There's fairies. You're right.
Long hair. The protagonist has long hair.
Protagonist has long hair. Is that that should be the category?
The protagonist has long
best
hair.
games that have dead ghouls that will not leave you alone. You have long hair and fairies won't stop following you around.
Honestly, Baldur's Gate probably would apply in this one too, if I think about it. The winner of this one was obviously Tears of the Kingdom. Glad to see it get some representation. That is another point for you. You are now ahead.
Another point for Andrew.
2-1. 3-2.
3-2.
We go now to the action category. Kind of an interesting one. You would think you could have taken some of the selections from action RPG and put them into this, action adventure. Because I don't know if I would really consider Alan Wake an adventure game. I also don't know if I'd consider it an action game. It's really at its core more of a walking sim, and people hate me for saying that, but it has a lot of walking sim elements in it.
Okay.
However, we get this category. You guessed Remnant 2. I guessed Hi-Fi Rush. The winner was Armored Core. Fires a Rubicon, which feels deserved. A game that I thought that I would play. You know, my darling development company, FromSoft, making that one. I haven't tried it. Maybe I will give it a shot. You talked about potentially wanting to give that one a shot as well. Right?
Yeah, it looked really good. It seems like something I'd really like, and maybe when I'm done Dead Island, I'll work my way through this list.
Yeah. It seems like our backlog only grows. But it is also interesting, Andrew, of all the games that have been nominated and all the ones that are considered potential Game of the Year material, that you go to Dead Island 2. That's like, but like it's strange because it's
felt
like
the most accessible.
That's fair, and I do the same thing as well. Where I'm like, I like Baldur's Gate 3. When am I going to bite the bullet and really sink some time into it? And then I'm just like, what about Chance of Sonar, which I just started? Like, let's try. Like, who knows?
When you create a list of movies that you need to see before like an award show or something like that, guess what goes first? The comedies. And then you're like, okay, I'm out of comedies.
Yeah.
This is an Icelandic document. Okay.
The Green Book 2. I don't know if I want to see this one. The first one didn't go over so well. The Green Book 2 Blindside crossover, just the white savior movie to save all white savior movies.
Yeah. Oh god, that won Best Picture. Fantastic.
Yeah, of course it did.
Yeah,
deservedly so. Speaking of deservedly so, potentially depending on whether or not you like JRPGs, indie game. You and I both guessed Cocoon on this one. I stand by that one. I think just not enough people played it, and I think Sea of Stars having a little bit more of a life cycle prior to the opening of the voting is maybe the thing that kind of pushed it over the edge. Sea of Stars was the winner in this category. Neither you nor myself guessed that one, obviously, so no more points awarded.
No, the only thing, there was another category, and you might have to help me with this, but it was like Best New Indie or something like that, and Cocoon did win that one, and it's from a studio's first game.
Yeah,
or
Best
like
Debut Indie Game, and Cocoon won that one, so I was happy to see it get some representation there. That was another really strong category, I thought, especially with the games that I tend to play nowadays. They usually are these more bite-sized kind of indie style games, so I was happy to see that Cocoon got some representation there. Obviously, I think Dredge was nominated for that one. Pizza Tower was nominated for that one. But Cocoon, in my mind, potentially Game of the Year, let alone Indie Game of the Year or Debut Indie Game. You can't win them all, though.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you can't win them all.
You're
right. They already got one, so you can't win them both.
Yeah, exactly. Best Ongoing. This was one that you guessed. Cyberpunk. A game that keeps on going, keeps on giving, obviously with the release of Phantom Liberty, and Fortnite. Now, here's a question before we talk about the winner of the category, which you got correct, which is Cyberpunk.
I did.
The Phantom Liberty DLC itself received nominations. So are we treating Cyberpunk as one self-contained unit, or is the Phantom Liberty DLC its own thing?
I also don't so I haven't played this game, so like people need to correct me, but like what is ongoing about it? I understand that Fortnite is like a drop in, every game is different. Yes. Call of Duty I think would fall into this too. Maybe some kind of sports game or something like that. Well, Cyberpunk just had a DLC. Is that the part that made it ongoing?
No, so that has to be factored into it because of the rise to fame and sort of the comeback story of Cyberpunk. But it also has to be just all of the shitty issues that they fixed. And this is what kind of blows my mind out of it. I'm happy that CD Projekt Red got a chance to fix the game that was supposed to be the game to end all games in Cyberpunk, which released 2 massive issues and glitches that doesn't need to be relitigated. So it looks like what it's being awarded for is fixing the game, which in my mind isn't like, that's not something to, it's like if you hand in an assignment and your professor is like, hey, A, this is a week late. B, it's a pile of garbage. Take 2 years to fix this one, and then you win best essay of the year. Like it feels strange.
Best essay of the year was obviously a big award that everyone was going for. It's too bad that it went to that person that had 2 extra years at it.
I thought it was Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, to be honest, and I'm waiting for that one to get its comeuppance.
Okay, well, there you go. But I agree with you. This feels like kind of a consolation prize where they're like, hey, you got it right the second time. You're like, wait, whoa, what's this?
That's it. Yeah. And it's if you're saying it's ongoing, then I don't think you can treat Phantom Liberty as its own game, which they seem to be doing in this year. Like it has its own nominations, not Cyberpunk, but Phantom Liberty specifically. Yeah, you got to separate the two or not, but you have to stick to your guns here. And this kind of speaks to the inconsistency that the Game Awards has. Not to just shit on it, but the Golden Globes goes through similar issues sometimes, and I think it just takes away some of the credit and credibility of it.
Well, it's so funny where the Golden Globes is famously like, well, we don't speak for the industry as a whole. It's more like, let's get people looking nice and drunk. And then, and that's going to be, it'll be fun. That's the only thing, like but if like the Oscars was like, like Best Picture and it was a movie from 2 years ago, you'd be like, Huh? Like, wait,
Yeah.
what is
The
this?
director's cut. The director's cut gets a new nomination, and that's its own thing. Most
That's a good
improved movie. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, we would be like, well, that's weird, right? You know, so I don't know. It feels, you know, we could kind of get to this near the end, but it just feels like more of an excuse to like play, chum up to like video game developers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that with the release of Fortnite's Lego mode and their rocket car mode or rocket racing, whatever it is, which I want to spend almost a whole episode talking about what Epic is doing to the game industry, not doing to, but how they're shaping it. Like they are making it so that the game you play is just an area that you live in, that you have access to a Minecraft, to a Rocket League, to a Battle Royale. It is so smart. If I could invest in Epic as a game company, they're going to be potentially on the level of like a Google or something like that if they succeed the way that they might with something like this.
It's crazy. I want to do a whole episode about Fortnite because this is something we've talked about forever. Actually, fuck this. We're going to do an episode about Fortnite. I'm just putting my foot down now. And because I've talked about it forever and Mikey's never really played it, I was like, this is a great excuse that we could play it, we could talk about it and the impact it's making, because it is just right now too. I was like, I am so in. And once again, I have not paid for a single dollar of any of it. So I just want to keep reminding everyone.
But that's why it's like when you talk about ongoing support, it's like, how is it not Fortnite? And even if Fortnite wins that year after year, and this is coming from someone who doesn't play it. Like I would have loved Overwatch to have been nominated, you know, a couple years ago. This year, not so much. But I was always like like if we're putting ourselves in camps that like cheer for a certain team or whatever, I'm team Overwatch. I want it to do well. But I respect the hell out of everything Fortnite does, and it's kind of amazing to me that it didn't win this award.
I know, it's kind of like Oprah when she took herself out of nominations after winning like 20 Emmys. She's like, okay, that's enough. It's like, you know, if that's what we get to, that's totally fine. But like, it's kind of crazy to look at this year and go like, what was the best ongoing game that everyone booted up every day and played something different? Cyberpunk. You're like, okay, interesting.
Oh, okay, wow. Doesn't seem right. But let's move to the next award here.
Sure.
This is where you and I, from this point on, kind of have some similar picks, but we just split them up among different categories.
Yes.
Narrative, I guessed Baldur's Gate 3 and you guessed Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 was the winner. I have to say that's a little surprising to me just because of the scope of narrative that Baldur's Gate encompasses. However, I'm not upset that Alan Wake 2 won this one because I think it takes a big swing with narrative. I think it's very much trying to do something different and be something different.
As if you're saying that it's almost a walking simulator, don't come at him. Actually, do come at him, at Retrograde Mikey. That it has, if it's going to win anything, there's got to be narrative. And I also believe direction as well, which we don't have as a prediction. Those ones have to go.
No, we do have game direction as a prediction.
Oh shit! Sorry. Well, spoiler alert. Is that, you know, like if those two aren't the things that you're giving for it for being essentially a walking simulator, then those are the ones that should win. So it does make sense now that I look back on it with hindsight. But yeah, narrative Alan Wake 2.
Yeah. It's I'm happy that Remedy got its time to shine. I think that it shows a lot of potential. I think the Remedy universe that it's created and it's kind of interconnected is the closest thing that we have to like the Marvel Cinematic Universe in gaming. So interesting to see where it goes, especially because it's not based off of IP that we're all knowing from like comic books and stuff. They're doing their own thing, which is very commendable. But that's one for you, and that puts the score at 5-2 with only 2 categories left. So I don't know how I'm going to catch up. I'm not sure if it's going to happen. The next category is game direction. I guessed Super Mario Wonder. I thought it was going to get shown a little bit more love. Obviously, we didn't do the prediction on family games, but that's what it ended up winning. Yes. Fine. And you guessed Tears of the Kingdom, which I thought was also a fantastic choice, but it ended up being obviously Alan Wake 2 for game direction.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of just shared my thoughts when we said about narrative, but yeah, that kind of makes sense based on everything I've heard that's the award it would win too, and almost guaranteeing itself winning narrative and winning game direction. You're like, it's not going to win game of the year now.
That's a great point. I don't think they were ready in such a strong year to really have a landslide of awards given only to one game. I think they really wanted to kind of spread the load. And this isn't like, I'm not saying that the Game Awards as a conglomerate had this idea, but I think as a critic, you want to show love to the games that deserve it. So you're not voting for Baldur's Gate. I think it's more about like, okay, all of these games brought something to the table. What do I award Alan Wake in, if not Game of the Year, because I'm giving Game of the Year to Baldur's Gate? I think there was a lot of that.
Well, yeah, you see this in all award shows when people start filling out their ballots and they're just going like, God, I'm giving it to the same thing all the time. Yeah. They try and mix it up a little bit. And so this makes a little bit of sense. And that kind of leads us to Game of the Year.
It does. Sorry. Before we get there, similarly, I'm curious about this. Nintendo is the only company that has two games that were featured pretty prominently in these awards, in Super Mario Wonder and Tears of the Kingdom. And similarly to when you have a movie with two best actors nominated to it, it's almost rare that one of them wins because people end up splitting their votes across those two actors from the same movie.
That's true.
Did that happen potentially with Nintendo and people saying like, well, Tears of the Kingdom is great and Mario is great, and some of them are like, we have to show Nintendo some love, and some go left, some go right, and then it turns out neither of them end up winning any awards.
Yeah, did they split the vote on the Nintendo games? That's a really good point, maybe, because a lot of them, because the two games found themselves in the same category a lot too. It's not like that one was in action and one was in action adventure. Or best indie or best whatever, and splitting the vote, but they're often in the same category. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
So we get now to the Game of the Year awards, as we've alluded to before. I guessed Tears of the Kingdom, and this was based on us talking about the game, everyone talking about this game when it first came out. It was in everyone's mind, like, let's go back to where we were. In everyone's mind, it was a shoo-in for Game of the Year. It was a joke that other games were even coming out. We already knew all the ballots were filled, and it's amazing that it was probably like the least likely to win this at the end of the year. You guessed Baldur's Gate 3 correctly. That's what ended up winning. So you ended up winning, not that it's important, but you ended up winning this game 6-2 in this kind of meaningless competition that we had that really doesn't matter and doesn't carry any weight whatsoever. In fact, it probably speaks worse towards you and makes you a little bit more of a nerd. I'm actually feel pretty good about losing it because I have better things to do with my time. But regardless, I want to look at this and say that potentially recency bias played a role. Do you think so or no?
Yes, I think it's impossible not to think that. Once again, all award shows, they always try and line up their movies, line up their TV shows, line up their video games right before the nominations come out. So it's the last thing in your head. I think that's just unavoidable. I think actually one of the outliers is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which came out in like January, and then it was next year. I think it has to be a part of it. If you'd switched the release dates and Legend of Zelda had just come out right before this, I think instead of Baldur's Gate, and Baldur's Gate came out in the spring, this would have been the flipped reaction probably.
It could have been, yeah. And I think the other side of it that I would understand is Breath of the Wild already came and went, and Tears of the Kingdom is a massive improvement on Breath of the Wild. But is this kind of a nod to in such a strong year to say, let's give it to a game that hasn't gotten it, as opposed to one that we've already has had its representation at the Game Awards. That could potentially be it. But Alan Wake 2 not getting it, but still getting a ton of awards. Baldur's Gate 3 being the big winner and winning the most number of awards at the Game Awards. That's where we stand. So final score, Andrew, 6-2. Congratulations.
Thanks. I'd like to celebrate, but it wasn't much of a competition, so I don't feel like dancing on other people's graves, especially when they put up such a poor competition. But it's a win's a win, so you just got to be happy. You know what I mean?
Are you talking about me? But like I didn't put up much competition.
It's not specifically about you, but it's just about this competition. Yes.
Well, no, I mean, it's like you completely ignored what I said in the beginning. Like, I didn't get a chance to stretch or even take my vitamins before we recorded this.
No.
I don't even need to come up with better excuses. That's pretty good. How am I supposed to pick awards if I don't stretch?
I'm sorry. You must have misheard me. You didn't get to stretch or come up with better excuses. You're like, if I come up with better excuses, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. You know what? That's a great point, Andrew.
Thank you.
I didn't have time to do anything, including coming up with excuses.
What were you doing?
I was fucking jacking off, man. Like, lay off.
You know what? It's a very reasonable thing. You're in between narrative dumps for Alan Wake, and you're like, got a jacket. I get it.
Dumps indeed. The two things that take up most of my time, Andrew.
Sometimes the same time.
Sometimes the same time.
So those are the Game Awards. I did pretty well. Yeah.
Let's go through. I want to get your thoughts on I'm just moving right past that. Let's get our thoughts on a couple little points that we can kind of just discussion topics. Larian Studios comes up to announce or to accept the award for Game of the Year. Dude comes up in a fucking full-on suit of armor and says, I didn't expect this. Sure. Sure, buddy.
That was funny.
It is, except it didn't come across as him telling a joke. He's like, I swear I would never. It's like when you're like, I never would have expected this to happen. And then you unfurl like a scroll of a speech that you're about to give.
Yeah. That was really funny. It also reminded me a lot of Job in Arrested Development with his picture of his fellow magicians, and it says, take me seriously. Where like he's in a full armor suit and he's like, these Game Awards should be taken seriously.
Yeah. And you know what? I want more of that though. I don't want this to be like a buttoned up Oscars clone. I want there to be people in cosplay. Like, this is gaming. Gaming is a different thing than movies. Let's lean into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Where was Lydia Tarr leading the orchestra? You know what I mean? Real person Lydia Tarr. But it's funny we're going to say this because we just did all the awards and nominees. And that will be an article that will come out today. But the most articles that will come out of the Game Awards is all the reveals, trailers, announcements that come out of it. So, it's just, you're almost getting your priorities straight by going like, you know what else came out? Lots of announcements.
That's true. Let's then move to some of the announcements then.
Sure.
And then we can give some opinions on them. This is pretty impressive actually. I always love like a shadow launch. Baldur's Gate 3, which wasn't on the Xbox, wasn't playable on the Xbox, is now playable on the Xbox as of the recording. So a huge night for it. I'm assuming they did gangbusters on the Xbox that day. Just a bunch of people watching it and downloading it. So good for them.
It's a perfect day to announce that we won Game of the Year. Now we're on Xbox. People are like,
yeah, bitch.
Yeah. Can I do one? Can I do one next?
Sure.
Arcane is now making a Blade game.
Man, let's talk about it. I'm so pumped about that.
Go. My favorite, it reminds me of one of my favorite fan fiction things of all time and kind of what is the issue with now. We're going to see a ton of video game characters being made into video games now because we just saw the Avengers with Square Enix a couple of years ago, and obviously Spider-Man games have done really well in Batman, and now we got Wolverine and Blade coming out soon. And it's one of the ones where the Avengers get together and Blade's like, hey guys, Captain America, I need some help with all these fucking vampires. And he's like, nah, we're not going to do that. He's like, fuck, man. Like, okay, but there's like a lot of vampires out there. And he's like, nah, yeah, I can't help you.
I feel like you guys are so focused on aliens. Have you looked at the vampire problem we got going
Spider-Man, please stop criminals. There are vampires running the city. They are in high office. And he's like, look, I'm not going to help you.
Listen, I'm not saying I agree with Thanos, but 50% of all the vampires that we got still leaves a ton of vampires.
I'm okay if I get taken because it's going to take a good, healthy amount of vampires with it. Now would be good for everybody. It's like, God, this guy won't
honestly
shut up about
put
vampires.
Me out of my misery, snap me out of existence if I don't have to deal with these fucking vampires all over. Get off my neck. What are you doing over there?
Oh, I love it. It's a great video game character to choose for, or video game character, comic book character to choose for a video game because it just, you can absolutely see it. The second you're like, Blade video game, you're like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. Why didn't they do that yet?
100%, especially with it being Arcane. Arcane obviously being the studio behind Dishonored and Deathloop. Yeah. They do a really good job of first-person mechanics, and it makes me wonder, is this going to be a first-person game? I think it would be good if it were. Yeah. I also like the idea that a lot of Arcane games come with this moral quandary of do I kill or do I incapacitate? I would love if they got rid of that and just let you go fucking buck wild with their abilities. You know, their blink mechanic that they have in Dishonored, and they've got like swarms, and just you can really get ruthless with it. I don't want to think about like, maybe I'll get a better reward if I don't kill the... No, let me fucking kill the vampire. Let me kill it in a swarm of blood.
It's a vampire.
This. Yeah.
Like, it's not like, it's like, what, like, well, I'll let you off this time. Like, just stop biting people. And he's like, you got it.
Stop biting my neck. Stop biting my neck.
Boo.
So I'm super excited for it. And one thing that they didn't really talk about, but is likely to be the case, is this will probably be an Xbox exclusive, with it being Arcane, especially under Bethesda's kind of purview here. So we'll see how that goes. The biggest one, Andrew, for me, or one of the biggest ones, is Hideo Kojima coming on stage with Jordan Peele and announcing OD and whatever the fuck that is.
It was a very classic Hideo Kojima where he walks out of a mysterious smoking door. And from what's that game called? PT?
PT. Yes.
Yeah. And everyone's like, whoa, Hideo Kojima. And then Jordan Peele, who dressed up in his best sweatpants, came out and everyone's like, ah! And it's a classic Kojima thing where people are like, what does this mean? He goes, I don't know. And like, goodbye, everybody. And everyone's like, wah!
What a strange trailer, just filled with legit actors. No one knows what it is. He's kind of said it's like a movie video game combination. Yes. It ends with a title that says for all players and screamers. So immediately I'm no longer interested. I don't want to be a screamer. I'll come back when Death Stranding 2 comes out. I do hope that this doesn't delay Death Stranding 2 because I know a lot of us were hoping for a new trailer, and maybe an announcement for a release date or something like that, which makes me worry that with every game saying it's coming out in 2025, maybe Death Stranding 2 is a 2026. I don't know.
Yeah, where it gets closer and closer to the real life Death Stranding.
Yeah,
do you get excited now? Like, I know forever we talked about Metal Gear Solid, and we would talk about the 90% of the game is like really cool and like grounded, and then all of a sudden at the end it's always like, and then a bunch of mechs fight. Sure. And you're like, whoa, that's crazy. And I would lose it a little bit, and I think you felt the same way, that Hideo Kojima needs a little bit of editing sometimes. And then Death Stranding comes out, and you're like, this is one of my favorite games of all time. So now when he says new game, I'm going to make a new game, are you like immediately like, well, here's my money, I don't care, just deliver it to my house?
Yeah, similar to, it's a good question, because I do remember having that conversation and being like, am I done with Kojima? Especially after my first run around with Death Stranding didn't work out. Now that I've kind of seen behind the scenes in what makes his game so great beyond just the Metal Gear of it all, I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to try out whatever he has, and I'm probably going to beat it even if I don't love it, because I think somewhere in there is going to be like he's an auteur and he's saying something and he's doing something. Right. And yes, I'm definitely back in with both feet on him.
See, there you go. So when he comes in, you're like, I got a new game. You're like, yes, all right, yes, 100%. Let's do it. 100%. Okay, that's awesome.
But also, I get my guard up a little, being like, this is so fucking weird. Just stop being so weird. But that's also what makes him great. So yeah,
that's a good point. Because that was really exciting. I think another one that I have to bring up is Sega. Sega is back.
This is awesome, dude. This
is right down our alley, man. Like, yes. The games that they announced: Streets of Rage, Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, which I really loved. Golden Axe, I was like, it was such a cool montage. I'm so in.
I'm in with both feet on that one too. I love this podcast because it got me back into retro games and taught me what I loved about them. The arcade element itself is something that I enjoy, kind of the fast pace, in and out nature of it. And Sega was so good at things like that, especially something like Crazy Taxi. As long as they don't change the formula too much, you just kind of update it. Give me a new Streets of Rage. I'm always there for that. Jet Set Radio, I'm always there for that. And all the games look great as well. I just love Sega being like, guys, we've been working on some shit, and just kind of unzipping their pants and just showing it to us, bearing their soul and their whole.
Yeah, I'm just gonna move past that. I'm really excited for Crazy Taxi. Like Jet Set Radio, I think I'm number one most excited for, because Crazy Taxi, what do you think? People are on their phones, like they're calling the cab on their phones.
It's Uber. You get dropped out of
Jane dropped off at like an Urban Outfitters, and I don't know what else is going to happen. It's going to be great.
I think it's not going to be about, you're going to be in a taxi and there's going to be no fares. You're just trying to run Uber off the road. Be like, why don't you have to get a license for this? I paid so much money for a license for this.
Yeah, you're like crazy on your horn all the time. Like,
yeah,
whoa,
exactly.
Yeah. That's going to be a lot of fun.
There's also the free God of War Ragnarok DLC that's releasing next week, which is massive. It's roguelike, they said. Yeah. Now, exciting. I do love the combat in it, but I've got my eye on roguelites and roguelikes as forms of DLC in AAA games. We got it in The Last of Us Part 2 that's coming out, the remaster or remake there. Remaster, I think. We got it in God of War. I'm just keeping an eye on it. I'm not calling any fouls just yet, but if this is the go-to of just like roguelike mode, I think we're going to get tired of it pretty quickly.
I know. What happened to like additional story? Why can't we just do that?
That's when I saw the announcement, I was like, man, 5 more hours of God of War Ragnarok would be perfect. Just like I'll talk about this next week, but Alan Wake as well. There's always going to be DLC. I'm so excited for the idea of playing 3 or 4 more hours of a bite-sized story. I don't always want roguelike. I like it. It can be fun, but I do also want that experience of like, what I love about these games is sure the gameplay, but is primarily the story and the experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's great. It's free. It's a DLC. It's God of War Ragnarok, which everyone loved. But it's kind of like, okay, let's see about that. I want to play it before I get like super excited.
100%. We got the ex-BioWare devs making a new game under the development company Archetype Entertainment. It looks like a new sci-fi RPG along the lines of what looks like Mass Effect. I'm interested always when members of an old company break off and do their own thing. We've had a lot of success there. We've also had some failures there. So, you know, who knows where they're going to land, but exciting to see that maybe this is a different take on old BioWare RPGs, especially with the inclusion of a song by Muse. I'm like, maybe this is for me. This is like for my sentiments. Right there,
built for you, Mikey. Built
exactly.
For you. I did like in the beginning of the show, they made a joke about playing people off too fast. That was a joke that they made in the opening, which, by the way, like every award show for the last 50 years making that joke. And then immediately played everyone off immediately. Like I think Christopher Judge got like 6 words out before he's like, oh, really? Okay, wow.
It was so funny because Larian Studios is giving their announcement and giving a dedication to a member of their staff who passed away, and they're getting played off. And it's like, fucking, what is this, controlled by AI? Like,
yeah, seriously, is there no human director in the back being like, oh, wait, go down. Wait, this is good.
I like.
Don't you want good moments?
That's it. They hire. Well, they got it. We're talking about it. So
fair enough.
They hire a pure sociopath who can't wait to cut people off at good moments.
Should play a large farting noise when the person's like, "Yeah, we're our dearly beloved." Boring.
Of games that could have won best ongoing, No Man's Sky, the Hello Games developer behind that game, announced a new game, Light No Fire. Looks kind of like Monster Hunter. Obviously Monster Hunter announced a new one. Neither you nor me are very interested in that. No. So people will get the news that they want on that. Kind of looks like Monster Hunter meets Breath of the Wild, maybe a little bit of Rust in there. It looks interesting. I'm excited to see what Hello Games learned from the release of No Man's Sky and how they can bring that into an entirely new game.
No, I agree. I saw that one. I was like, oh, okay. That looks pretty interesting. I don't know. I try not to get too lured into these trailers because, the trailers, you're like looking at me like, yeah, it looks pretty good. Whatever. And then I look back at the collapsing amount of games I have to play and I'm like, oh, okay. I can shove a few more in here.
Of course, yeah. I do need more back support in when I'm sitting. So to have my backlog just like even taller and sturdier that I can lean against sounds great.
Yeah, like a throne.
The two ones that I want to give a quick shout out to because they are for me: Rise of the Golden Idol. No release date just yet, but it's a new Case of the Golden Idol follow-up. It doesn't look like DLC. It looks like its own thing, which I'm happy about because that means we can reset the difficulty curve, which I thought was getting a little bit obnoxious in the DLC we were getting for Case of the Golden Idol. It's a Netflix game as well, which is massive. And I think if Netflix is starting to make this foray into gaming, it's obviously releasing on other consoles, but the first thing you saw at the trailer was the Netflix symbol, which was curious.
Very curious because they're getting into gaming in a big way. They spent a ton of money and you're going to start seeing the fruits probably next year, they're saying. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. And then Dredge crossover with Dave the Diver is looks a little too scary for me, but I'm happy that it's happening.
It's a good idea though. I love these crossovers.
I love that these are two competing IPs that decided to cross over with one another. This continuance of companies realizing that crossover of IP benefits both parties, not just one. Let's see more of that. 2 more games that I want to go. Pony Island 2, which was kind of glossed over by a lot of people, but this is Daniel Mullen's new project. It looks like it's going to come out in 2025 or 2026, which is disappointing, but he's the guy who made Inscription. Inscription was one of my favorite games of the past few years. And it looks very much along the lines of that kind of glitchy game within a game, pull back, and there's like real FMV graphics, 3D graphics, like Civilization style games. It looks incredibly exciting for me, that one. And then we get Suicide Squad, and I'm proposing that we just change the title from Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League to Suicide Squad Tries Again. I think we're done. Can we be done with this? This game is, I can't imagine it being good.
It's the third fucking year in a row we're talking about this game.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like it saved anything.
And also, didn't people get to put their hands on it recently and they're like, oh, it is broke. Like, it's not good.
There was a beta and a lot of people were saying that. Some people were apologetic towards it, but yeah. The one thing before we finally say goodbye, Andrew, is we have to bring this up. We had a whole episode on this game. It was very much hyped up. 7 nominations for Spider-Man 2, 0 wins. a very disappointing turnout, I would assume, for Insomniac. But not, in my mind, incredibly surprising. I don't know how it would have stood out against a lot of other games in the category, similar to Super Mario Wonder. It's like, I'm upset it didn't get as much representation in wins, but I'm not upset at the games it lost to.
No, I think that's totally fine. I think they're going to be very happy with all the money that they made and how big of a game it was. The other one too is no outside IP won any awards. You know what I mean? It was internal remakes and sequels and things like that, but like no outside thing came in and won. So I think that's totally fine. I don't think it takes anything away from that game. That's so good.
I agree. Yeah. Any other closing thoughts on the awards?
The Verge posted an interesting article about Jeff Keighley that he let game developers down. That's the title of the article. And it's about how they didn't even mention at all the unbelievable amount of layoffs that have happened in this year, of the video games that the people are handing awards to. The people that made them don't have jobs. And you're like, that is very odd to think about. You know what I mean? Like, it is when you think about productions of TV and movies and stuff like that, you work for that part and then the contract ends and you're like, thank you very much. That was a lot of fun working on these. These are full-time, employees that work at these places, and they worked really hard to make these games and we're giving them awards, and they no longer work for companies. They're unemployed or work for somewhere else. That's very odd. And I would say for most people, like, well, that's not Jeff Keighley's job to notify this. But at the same time, it's like he brought up the Activision Blizzard thing and then said that they weren't allowed to be nominated for the year when there was the rampant sexual harassment cases and stuff like that. So it's not like he's never been involved with the curation of who gets awards. But I think one line of saying like, we're thinking of all the people that, that worked really hard on these games and don't have jobs anymore. With that, let's move on to the whatever. Like, that's all it has to be before you're like, okay, well, whatever.
It's true. I just think it's No, you're right. Like Jeff Keighley has made a concerted effort to make himself the face behind the Game Awards. And with that comes the responsibility of spinning plates and the balancing act of appeasing people and being responsible and representative of people who don't necessarily have a voice. He tries to do things like the Games for Change category and all that stuff. And it's clear he's putting out an effort, but you'd think he maybe just needs to involve a couple other people. And this, I don't want this to be me shitting on Jeff Keighley. I actually really like Jeff Keighley. I think what he does for the game industry is a really good thing, but that's not to say, similar to us critiquing games that we really like, I'm critiquing a person who I think is making a lot of positive change. There does need to be some more representation in some of the things as a fire alarm goes off in my condo. That scared the shit out of me.
Well, that's Jeff Keighley's running that fire alarm. He's like, okay, that's enough of that. No, that was my only note. Just going like, it just feels kind of odd to you got to acknowledge the people that helped make the game, not just the guy in a shining armor suit. Which now that I'm thinking about it, is not a great image. But well, I did everything. But yes,
this night in this armor set cost me the much as like 3 people's salaries that we had to lay off. I couldn't afford this, so I had to lay off some people.
So thank you for laying them off so I can get this beautiful suit.
Look how cool this is. Look how you can see your disappointed face in the reflection of my suit of armor.
I hope he wore that when he laid people off. Well, that is the Game Awards. Next week, we are going to be talking about GTA 6 and the year of excitement we have to be looking forward to that game. So until then, we love every single one of you, and we can't wait to talk to you soon. My name is Andrew Bascom, and with me, as always, is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself,
Mikey Aaronworth.
This is the Retrograde Podcast.
Game over. Andrew, I still think it was more of a draw. I think if we can count this as a draw.
How? Not even on Mario Paint would this be a draw.
Okay, that was pretty good.
Thanks.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get off my neck. What are you doing over there?